We're back, Red versus Blue, episode number 62. My name is Mike Stark.
And I'm Keith Curry.
We've been away for a little while, and there's been some things happening. And most of the things surround the Epstein case, which there are many, many dynamics to the Epstein situation. And Keith is going to enlighten us a little bit.
Well, Mike, it's been all Epstein all the time. You know, this is the scandal that just will not go away because Donald Trump won't let it go away. Let's review. Over the past several years, Trump, J.D. Vance, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and the rest of the Trump manosphere has stoked the controversy and conspiracy about Epstein. They all said, let's just release the Epstein files. And it became an article of faith among MAGA, because MAGA sees this as a real test of whether you are a institutional establishment pervert and pedophile, or whether or not you're standing for freedom with the people. And on this issue, Trump has separated himself from his base in a way that has made him uncomfortable and, frankly, incapable of being able to deal with it effectively. In February, Attorney General Pam Bondi promised to release the files that were sitting on her desk, as she said. In May, Bondi apparently briefed Trump in the Oval Office that, in fact, he was frequently mentioned in the files. And in June, Kash Patel from the FBI and Pam Bondi came out and said, well, there's nothing to see here, no files, please go away, and that's the end of it. Well, that set off the firestorm. And so in July, Trump is going, why are you still asking about this? I don't want the support of those of you who are focused on the files. I wasn't briefed on it. And if I'm in it, it's because Obama put me there. And I'm not in the birthday book, even though I did sell drawings at auction in New York during the same time.
Right.
He attempted to pivot to Russiagate and Gabbard and Obama. They prepared a weird video showing Obama going to jail, which you have to wonder about the mental state of a president of the United States who gets up in the middle of the night and tweets a made-up AI video of Obama being hauled off to jail for something that is just a nonsense thing. What happened in Russiagate, of course, is that they did find that Russia, while they attempted to influence the election, did not tamper with the election machines and produce actual changed results. And so the Trump team has hit upon that as evidence that the whole thing was a hoax. But if you look closely, you see it's really not how they're presenting it. The birthday book came out, a body message written to Epstein by a bunch of people, including Bill Clinton, apparently, and Donald Trump. Trump's message alluded to secrets between the two of them with a detailed drawing with his signature in the pubic hair position. He denied ever making the drawing, that it ever existed. And apparently the book is in the custody of the Epstein estate and will undoubtedly be subpoenaed and released sometime, which will further show that the president was not telling the truth. He claimed that he kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago because he was a creep, and then changed his story that he stole my employees, presuming that they belonged to him, including a 16-year-old Virginia Guthrie, who was working in the spa at Mar-a-Lago. One wonders why a 16-year-old was working in the spa at Mar-a-Lago, but apparently she was, who was poached by Epstein, and that became the reason why he had the falling out. That's a change in his previous story that he fell out with him because he was a creep. He said he never had the privilege to go to the Epstein Island. He says, I was good for a change, implying that he knew precisely what was going on at Epstein Island. And also, it's corroborative with his past statement that he likes him on the younger side. So he pretty much had Epstein's number in terms of what he was up to and what he was doing. But he made the whole fallout to be about personnel issues and recruitment of Mar-a-Lago employees to Epstein. Now, Epstein was in finance. He didn't run a spa. So the fact that he hired them away, he didn't make them stockbrokers. So it's not clear how many people he was hiring and what he was hiring them for.
Right.
And the Republicans have now demanded the release of all of the Epstein documents. And Speaker Johnson adjourned the House to prevent that from happening. The president dispatched the number 2 guy at Justice, Todd Blanche, the deputy attorney general, who was his personal attorney in prior life, who spent 2 days with Ghislaine Maxwell in Florida to talk to her about what she knows. And he apparently asked about 100 different people. Not clear what she said. She's asking for a pardon, which Trump refuses to rule out. She is the one person who did get significant jail time because of the Epstein sex scandal. It was announced today that she was moved to a minimum security prison in Texas, out of the place where she was at in Florida. So she's already received some special handling as a result of her conversations with the deputy attorney general. And it's not clear where this is going to go. In the meantime, Vance, Bondi, and Patel they might be in witness protection because they have been completely unheard of on this matter. There's speculation that Pam Bondi is going to be the one who takes the fall and gets fired by Trump because of it. The Attorney General has told him that Trump is in the file. He's denied it, but some of the file has already been released. The phone logs showing his numbers and numbers of many of the Trump family members are in Epstein's phone book. The flight logs have been released showing that Trump flew on multiple occasions on Epstein's plane. The problem when you lie in politics is that you got to remember the lie, otherwise you get caught up the next time. And he has been caught up multiple times over the course of the past month because of this. Maxwell, of course, now is trying to leverage this to get out of jail early. She'd otherwise be in prison until 2037. 2/3 of voters oppose that. So Trump is in somewhat of a dilemma here. But he's looking a little bit crazy as he responds to this. And I've said this before, Mike. Trump, his symptoms present differently than those of Joe Biden. Joe Biden looks sort of old and feeble. Trump just looks like he's mentally out of it. A good example was when he told a story recently, just out of the blue, about his uncle, who was a professor at MIT,
right,
who he alleged had 3 degrees, none of which he had. He had different degrees. That Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was one of his students. Well, the problem with that is Kaczynski went to Harvard and then went to Michigan and was never a student at MIT. His uncle, therefore, did not teach him. And Trump claims to have had conversations with his uncle about Kaczynski and about how he was sort of, an outstanding student, but a little weird. The problem is that Trump's uncle died in the 1980s, and Kaczynski did not become famous until 1996 when he went on trial. So that conversation could never have happened. So one has to wonder, this is the president of the United States making up a story that is fact-checked in real time, and before he steps off the podium, people have disproven the things that he has said. Why is he lying about this? Why is he making this stuff up? And does he, in fact, himself know whether he's telling the truth or not? Maybe he just internalizes the falsehood and doesn't know the difference.
My question is bigger than that. Why does his supporters accept this?
Well, I don't know. That's the thing about it. He's the great leader. And if he says it, it must be true, even if it's not. And once he says something that contradicts it, then they'll believe something else. It's a very much a cult-like thing. And that's why the whole Epstein thing has been so significant, because it is the first issue. I mean, he bombed Iran and they didn't like that. He's going to give arms to Ukraine and they don't like that. He threw Musk over the deck and they didn't like that. But those were not sort of core theological underpinnings of the Trump cult, right, like Epstein is. Yeah. And so there are issues that will affect that relationship, and more cracks are going to come up, and we're going to see what they're going to be. I think the strategy now with Todd Blanche talking to Maxwell is that let's identify 20, 30, 100 other people who are in there, and let's just sort of stand in the line with those guys and make it about a whole group of people and not just Trump. And he'll sort of hide in the crowd. I believe that is the strategy that they're pursuing.
Well, we will see where this goes. And again, it's a major distraction for getting real stuff done for the American people. But let's spend a couple minutes talking about some things that maybe he's getting done.
Mike, we're speaking here on August 1st. It's the day that the tariffs go into effect. He did cut a deal with Europe for a 15% tariff, not the 30% that was threatened. So that will cause the cost of European goods, including automobiles, to go up. Ironically, this deal will produce lower tariffs on cars coming from Europe than cars coming from Canada. The other thing it does is that the tariff plan has a big tariff on aluminum. Ford made a big effort to move the production of the F-150 to the United States. The problem is they build F-150s out of aluminum. And so they import the aluminum to build the F-150. So it is going to be a major casualty of the tariff wars. And Americans bring a lot of cars back and forth across the border for assembly with Canada. Right. So the fact that tariffs are high on Canada mean that the tariffs are going to, in the long run, or in the short run actually, impact the American automobile industry, the very people they were trying to save. It's a very poorly thought out policy. We saw a bad jobs report today. Only 73,000 new jobs were created. We're seeing huge tariffs, 39% on Switzerland, big tariffs on Brazil. So coffee prices are going to rise. And the market is off another 526 points today. So Wall Street is waiting for the taco trade to come back into line here, and for Trump to fold on some of this. The interesting thing is that a big deal about the Canadian tariffs being high, but it exempts products that are under the old U.S., Canada, Mexico treaty. So most of the Canadian products are going to be exempted. So he's talking a big game. He's trying to leverage them on, I think, recognizing Palestine. He's trying to leverage Brazil on Bolsonaro, who's facing corruption charges, who's Trump's buddy. None of this has anything to do with U.S. trade or economics. But it shows you that the opportunity for chaos in the U.S. economy exists when the president does this stuff.
Where does all this sit in terms of polls and the Democrats who are completely inept at this point at accomplishing anything, as far as I'm concerned, as a Democrat?
Well, with the big, beautiful bill underwater in the polls, with the tariffs drawing destruction through the economy, with the whole Epstein matter, you would think the Democrats would be riding high. Enthusiasm among Democrat voters is high, but in terms of the overall population, they're having problems. First of all, the most important question, are right track, wrong track? By 53.7% versus 41.3%, the American people believe we're on the wrong track. That should be a strong driver for Democratic support. But when you look at favorability, Trump's favorability is minus 7%, 51.9 versus 44.8. Republicans is underwater by 12%, 54.4 versus 42.3. But Democrats are underwater 59.3 unfavorable, 36.3 favorable, underwater by 23.6 points. Wow. It is just a disastrous poll situation because there's no clear vision for what the Democrats are. Who is the most corrupt? Now, by any rational measure, he's building golf courses in Scotland this week. Right. And he wants to put the next G20 meeting at Doral in Florida. I used to go to Doral. It's an old sleepy, I think the Teamsters owned it at one time, resort near the Miami airport. But he'll make a huge amount of money if the G20 goes there. The most corrupt president in American history. But the American people believe Democrats are corrupt by a 49% margin, Republicans only 44%. On Epstein, they disapprove by 58% of how Epstein's been handled, only 18% approve. And among Republicans, 38% approve of how he's handled Epstein, 24% disapprove, 38% aren't sure. So there are some chinks in the armor, but the Democrats are not taking advantage of it. Right. 90% want full release of all the Epstein files. Ultimately, he's going to have to get them out there and despite the bullet, and that's why he's trying to, I think, hide in the crowd of other people's names. And then in politics generally, Texas is going to redistrict to get 5 new Republican seats. California is going to try and counter and overcome constitutional restrictions to pick up 4 or 5 seats in California. Harris has announced she's not going to run for governor. That's probably good for Democrats. And if she stays out of the national races, Republicans would love for her to run for president. I don't think she will. In North Carolina, Roy Cooper, the former governor, is going to run for Senate. That gives the Democrats a chance to pick that up. Laura Trump, who was talked about as a candidate, is out. She actually lives in Florida, being the problem. So that's going to be a race Democrats could pick up. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not going to run for governor of Georgia. That's going to be helpful to Democrats because she is a that case. And Pete Hegseth, who everybody knows is incompetent as defense secretary and is very uncomfortable because he can't hire any staff that he can't put through a polygraph, is talking about running for governor of Tennessee, which puts Tennessee in play for the Democrats. Hegseth had previously run for Senate in Minnesota, where he's actually from. In the South, they call those guys carpetbaggers. So there's pluses and minuses for both parties, but the Democrats really have got to get a message, and they've got to be more coherent in terms of that message.
Yeah, and right now, both parties are sort of sorting things out for the midterms, which are going to come up next year, but they're just sorting things out at this point. When do you think that will take hold in terms of the campaigning and all of that? When will that start? Probably November, December of this year?
Yeah, it started in some districts already. There's some national advertising going in targeted districts that you see from both parties. Candidates are now making decisions. Michelle Steele announced today she's not going to run for re-election in the district she lost by 600 votes. So as the candidate, with Harris out of the race, that makes the California governor's race now more clear. Not more clear, but it makes the other candidates in there committed to stay in the race. Right. So this is the time where we'll have candidates sorting, and then once we see who the candidates are, then big money will start to make its bets about where it's going to go. The wild card being if any of these states do follow through on redistricting and change the lines. I would predict the Democrats are going to take the House The Cooper thing gives them a greater opportunity in the Senate, but it's still very hard for them in the Senate. So that's where I think things are going to be.
Which is not unheard of in a midterm to have the other party take over. Yeah.
The enthusiasm is much stronger with the out party. There's issues that people are upset about with the in party, and there's certainly plenty for people to be upset about now. So I would see a strong and enthusiastic Democratic response in 2026.
And again, that's traditional almost.
Yes, almost. Absolutely. Almost every year.
Okay. Anything else we need to cover real quickly? We covered a lot of ground here, and we will obviously be back when there's more news and more information. But anything else?
Well, I mean, you just see the pace of news, from the tariffs and the economy to the war in Ukraine, where apparently now Trump has figured out which side to be on, to the Epstein matter, where it's a steady drip of new information every day. And soon you'll have the midterm campaign. So stay tuned, because it's going to be an exciting year of politics. A lot going on.
And we'll be here with you. If you haven't, subscribe to our podcast, like our Facebook page. We're getting feedback, believe it or not, from a lot of quarters, and that's great. We love that you listen, and we appreciate you listening. We will be back soon with yet another edition of Red versus Blue.
Thanks, everybody.